behind you. If you can't find a prayer book, if you would raise your empty hand, and our amazing CBE colleague Karen might come and bring you a prayer book. If you need a prayer book, please raise your hand high in the air. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Again. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Karen, we need about half a dozen prayer books in the front row for Abe and Matt and their families. These books open from right to left because they're mostly in Hebrew. Hebrew goes from right to left. We're looking in the lower right-hand corner for page 190. What did I say, remember? 2, thank you, 192 in the lower right corner. You might have 2 numbers in the lower right corner. We'll be following the ones in brackets if you have to choose. You might be looking at a book that says the Torah. Look on the cover. If it says the Torah, that's a different book. It is the book, according to some. But here is another book which we need that says Mishkan Tefillah on the cover. And we're on page 192 in the lower right. Here comes a prayer book. Make sure that everyone in the front row, Karen, including the younger set, gets one. Thank you. 192, Matov. Try singing this with me.
Shabbat Shalom. What we just sang, Ma Tovu, is our traditional prayer of gratitude for being in a sanctuary as Jews. And this morning, wow, can we really get in touch with that gratitude? I mean, first of all, of course, we've had 2 years in which it's been really questionable whether we'd be in this room, and we haven't. But then in order to get in here, every one of you had to have a special mask over your nose and mouth, which you're going to keep on the whole time. You had to be vaccinated. You had to, many of you, rapid tested to get in here. All that. And then, if that wasn't enough, we had a giant snowstorm. You had to trudge through the snow to get here. So everybody in this room has earned being in this room. You have worked hard to be in this room. It is amazing that you got here and that you're here. We're so glad you're here. And if you are on Zoom, we understand entirely. And we're glad you're with us also. And together we make a community this morning to celebrate Shabbat. And let me tell you a little bit about what you've got in your hands. You've got a Siddur, a prayer book. It, as we said before, goes from right to left. We're going to be praying almost entirely in the Hebrew. But if you don't read Hebrew, no big deal, because all of the words are transliterated right next to the Hebrew. So you could join with every word, every syllable, every phrase, if you want to. And you can see the translation below, so you can see exactly what we're saying. And then if you're looking for other ways in, if you want to connect in a way that the traditional liturgy doesn't facilitate, you can use the left page, which will usually be some kind of poetic interpretation of the words that we find in the Hebrew. Some kind of way to help you connect with the meaning of this. And the reason that's important is because we are not putting on a show here. This is not a performance, and you're not an audience. Even if you're on Zoom, you're not an audience, you're part of this. And we actually want you in it with us. And this is why it's so important. Because our world is moving really fast. It is full of busyness and worry and stress and rushing and trying to fix and make and build and control and do. And we're going to talk a little more about this later when we talk about the Torah. But sometimes we're doing so much work in the world, whether that's homework or whether that's work, that we forget who we really are. We forget where we really are. We forget how amazing it is to be alive. We forget the very, very simple blessings just of every single day. We don't have time to stop and notice, wow, I'm breathing right now. I can see colors and shapes and amazing things. I can move my body. I feel in my chest, I feel love. We can forget all of that with the kind of ordinary rush of every day. And so we have this brilliant inheritance that we call Shabbat. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about this. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this, but it's gonna connect to what Matt and Abe are talking about. We need it so much, or else we lose track of the meaning of the whole thing. And this whole thing isn't forever. It's right now. And it's precious. And so use this morning to remember, oh yes, I'm more than my work in the world. Oh yes, I'm part of this amazing living system we call the earth. Oh yes, I'm in this vast cosmos that is stunning and awe-inspiring. Oh yes, I am small and it is all magnificent and grand. And we're going to be using the word God throughout because all of the prayers pretty much talk about God. And so if you're somebody who sees that word and you think, I'm not sure how to relate to that, it's okay. Because the reason we use the word God is we're trying to point to that bigness, to that wholeness, to that oneness, to that vastness that we're so small in relationship to get in touch with that feeling of awe and wonder and grandeur. And so you could use anything to do, like definitely don't fight with the prayer book in even a second. If you come to the word God and you're not sure how to relate to it, okay, make it love, make it life, make it the universe, make it whatever reminds you of like, wow, it's happening right now. I'm alive right now. And it isn't forever, but it is awesome. That's the essence of what this morning is about. And that's why you need to be part of it, not just watching. So use this book, use the silences, use the beautiful music, use the fact that we're in community, use the fact that we're in this sacred space. Use whatever you need to use to get there. We go next to page 194. And we just told you all about the book and the words and everything on the book, and we're about to sing something that's not in the book. So you're just going to listen to Cantor Breitzer, and it's simple, and you'll be able to join with him. And the last line he says is in the book. It's the last line of Hebrew on this page. And this prayer is about being grateful for our bodies, for the miracle of our bodies and our souls. And then we go from there into the miracles of every day, that we say them every day in the morning just for waking up. They're just all these wondrous things about just waking up. And then we go from there into Psalm 150, which Even if you can't join any of the other Hebrew, you can definitely join on this one because the main word is hallelujah. And everybody knows that word. So you can just sing hallelujah, and we invite you to sing that with us when we get there. We invite you to sing all of it with us at every point. All right, we continue on page 194, noticing the miracle that is our bodies.
I thank you for my life, body and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I am perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. Try singing that. I thank you for my life, body and soul. Help me realize I'm beautiful and whole. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, a little broken too. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. My God, my God. A little higher. And even higher. The middle of 194. אשר אתה נשאת לי בינה להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם פוקח עברים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם זוקף כפופים. 200. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who stretches the earth over the waters. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish aromim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, anoten nayaf koach. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. 202. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me and you and each and every one of us here in the sanctuary, and the 35 screens on Zoom right now, and all the people on Facebook Live, and the people outside shoveling snow in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chori. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Yisrael with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. Okay, time to get a bit more comfortable. Sing out. Oh. Sing a little louder. Oh. Can you shift your weight in your pew? Oh. Tap your foot in time. Oh. 2:18. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Don't forget to breathe through your mouth. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. All right, Simone, you were ready to kick that energy level up.
It was.
I think we all are. I think we're just so excited to have something to celebrate. And it's so great that we're standing already.
It is so great that we're standing already, because now we're going to make this the friendliest place you've ever been in Brooklyn. So you're going to find somebody you don't know, you're going to leave where your seat is, you're going to introduce yourself. Okay, exactly. Get modeled well. Find someone you don't know, introduce yourself, Shabbat Shalom. If you're on Zoom, you're going to be sent out to a breakout room. Turn on your camera, say hi to somebody there. Well done. Good job. Say hi to each other. Time to return to your spot. You're going to stay standing. We're going to stay standing. We're going to be back in our spot where we were, but standing up. As we turn to page 144, nope, 224. At night, Hatzi Kaddish is 144, just so you know. In the morning is 224. We're going to be standing. Everybody rise. Hatzi Kaddish, we're facing Jerusalem. 224.
voices. Please be seated. 228. Let's try it together.
Please join me in the English in the middle of page 229. You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light, and from nothing at all perceive in a world that has turned old, a shivering new creation right before our eyes made this moment just for us. How much of life reveals your presence, how much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the sea. You are praised, who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives the delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer Hameot. We come on page 230 to Ahava Rabbah, a prayer in gratitude for our capacity to learn. And on this day, we celebrate two young men who have learned so much to be ready for this day. They've learned skills. They've learned in relationship to our ancient sacred text. And they're going to teach us. And part of what this prayer is about is all the ways that learning and teaching continues from person to person, the way that we grow in learning and teaching all the time, the way that that never ends, it never stops. It doesn't stop at 13, obviously, but it also doesn't stop at any time in our lives. We're always learning. And we call this a gift of love from God. We think of it as a great mercy, a great kindness, that we're never stuck in some old, fixed way of seeing. We can always see in a bigger, more expansive way. We can always understand more deeply. We can always grow in wisdom. So we pray together in gratitude for that gift.
ובכל מאודיך, 234, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לראות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם. אמן. 240. Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Ata Adonai Gal Yisrael.
Today we celebrate a new generation receiving Torah. We're about to pray the Amidah, the Tefillah, the central prayer of our service, and it starts on page 242. It's the first main prayer on 244. We introduce ourselves to God in the names of our ancestors. We say, I am the descendant of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Rebekah, Jacob, and Rachel, and Leah. And we know you, God, because you were there for them. You had compassion on them. You had kindness for them. You helped them be safe. Do the same for us. And then in the third prayer, the Kiddushah, we end the prayer by singing. We're going to sing back and forth to each other, Lador Vador, from generation to generation. And so this morning, as we celebrate the way the Torah is passed from generation to generation, as we celebrate that chain of tradition and the way that every generation takes its place in the story of our people, we make this prayer with that in mind, remembering who we come from, remembering who there will be those who follow us, remembering that we're just part of this long line, coming before God with open hearts, and with the words that we find in our book and the words we find inside. The same words that our ancestors prayed in many cases were part of that long tradition. So we approach God with that humility, that gratitude, that sense of where we belong in time. It's truly important.
through page 261, using the words of these pages, the words we find inside. When we finish our prayers, we may be seated. Page 252. This is a prayer for purity of intentions, purity of heart. Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Eloheinu, Ratzei, Ratzei, Menuchatenu, Kadeshenu, B'mitzvotecha, V'tein chalkeinu, B'toratecha, Sabeinu, V'tuvecha, V'samecheinu, B'shuvatecha, V'taher libeinu, V'taher libeinu, V'taher libeinu, V'taher libeinu, V'taher libeinu, V'taher libeinu,
Boy, I missed you guys. This crew over here, for those who might not know.
I'm taken back to like fall of 2018.
Yeah, or 19.
Fourth grade, right? Fourth grade?
Or 19,
yeah, 19
anytime before March of 2020. Anytime before then. This crew sat right over there. Every single Shabbat morning. And they're back. They haven't been here for a couple of years. Yeah. Really nice to have you back. So, in a moment, we're going to go to our Torah service. It's going to be exciting. First, we have some very exciting greetings and announcements from our president, John Horowitz.
Thank you, Rabbi Timoners. Good morning and Shabbat Shalom, everybody. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I want to welcome you here this morning, to all of you here joining us in person, as well to all of you who are joining us virtually. I want to say Mazel Tov, Matthew and Abraham. I think I speak for all of us when we say we're both excited to hear from you and learn from you this morning, so Mazel Tov. As always, I want to thank our clergy. Thank you, Rabbi Timoner. Thank you, Cantor Breitzer, for leading us this morning. I want to thank our Executive Director, Mark Flaxer, and all his staff for all they do each and every day for all of us. I want to thank Karen Gerwin in the back, who is supporting us in person. Thank you, Karen. And I want to thank Ben Kern, who is supporting us on the Zoom and the live stream. There's only one announcement. It is snowing outside, but at CBE, we are thinking about summer. After 2 years, CBE Kids Camp is back and registration is now open. So I encourage you, if you are interested, go to our website at cbebk.org/camp to learn more and to register. In addition, to learn all and everything you wanted to know about CBE, please go to our website, again, cbebk.org for details about this and everything else. It's great to see you all. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, John. And we work to keep our announcements short, but I want to just make sure you know something. This particular crew knows that next Shabbat is our big open, welcome back everybody, time to come back. Shabbat.
Does that mean that Yafa is going to be in person?
It does, in
next
fact.
Shabbat morning for the first time in 2 years?
Wow. Yeah, it's a big deal. So this applies to some of you here in the room, so that's exciting. All right, so before we take that Torah out of the ark, we have a special moment, which is that Abe and Matt are going to receive talitot from their parents, Dan and Stephanie. And I'm going to explain as they come up what this is. You might know, but in case you don't, talit or talith is a prayer shawl. We wear it when we pray, particularly in the mornings. And it could look a lot of ways. It can have colors, it can have patterns, it can be different fabrics, but what happens, what all of them have, is these things on the corners, 4 corners. These are called tzitzit, and they are tied, wrapped, and knotted in a specific code that represents the name of God and the mitzvot of the Torah. And so when Abe and Matt put these on their shoulders today, what they're saying is, okay, they worked really hard to get to this day. It seems like a culmination, but actually, I'm wearing this now. This is just the beginning of the rest of my life, living as a Jewish person. Right? You're just in a perfect position. You can see him there, you can see him there, you can see him, you can say the blessing together. You ready?
Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatei b'tzitzit.
Amen. Beautiful. And now we're going to proceed with our Torah service. Return to your seats, but you're going to stay here. Amen. I'm going to need you definitely. You're part of this. So we're going to turn to page 362, and we're going to need the following people to help us. We're going to need Aaron and Jordan Rosen, and we're going to need who are going to open the ark, and then we're going to, for the processional, when Abe and Matt have the Torah in their arms and they're walking around the sanctuary, they invite all of their friends who are in attendance to join them for the hakafah, for the procession, to follow them with the Torah. For now, we ask everyone to please rise, and we're on page 362.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shema.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Shabbat Shalom. Karen, we're going to need a chair up here for the end of the Torah service. Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom. So, here we are in the book of Exodus. And we already crossed the sea. Unfortunately, that's not this week. That was a great week. Last week, we arrived at Mount Sinai. Whoa, lightning, thunder, God's presence, 10 Commandments. This week, we're hearing the rest of the story at Sinai. We're hearing a whole bunch of laws. It's called Mishpatim, a whole bunch of laws related to that are Torah, that are the essence of Torah. And so that's what we're going to be hearing chanted this morning. We are going to be looking at Exodus chapter 22, starting at verse 24. And as I mentioned before, I missed this crew over here. So we're going to have the first Aliyah is going to be chanted by Stephanie, even Matt's mom. And we're going to invite up the CBE crew to come up for the Aliyah. I want to say, if you're someone who hasn't had a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah yet, don't chant the blessing because you want the first time to be on your day. But still come, stand with the people who have.
So if you're a regular, you could bring an adult who might be over that age with you.
Yes, especially,
Oh, okay.
yes, the adults are especially welcome to come and actually say the blessing. So we're going to have the CBE crew come up. If you're somebody who is, once upon a time a regular here, maybe still a regular here, come on up.
And Rabbi Tomer, if people want to follow along with these verses, they can look in a book, right?
So true, cancer breaks are so true. So you're going to be looking at the Torah commentary. So different than the prayer book you've been in, it's on the clue is that the cover says the Torah, so you can find it. And you're looking at page 518, 518.
Can I get one of you to hold this open, please?
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Baruch Adonai mevorach leolam vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chanu
Good one. Amen.
Amen. Im kahasef talve et ami. Etani ima lo tiya lo kenosha. Lo tesimun alav nesha. Im havol takbol samat reacha ad bo hashemesh tishivenu lo. Ki hasuto levadaki simlato. Le'aroba meyeshka v'haya ki yitzhak elai v'shamati ki anun ani.
1, 2, 3.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chanu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
All right, now we're going to invite Abe up to continue the chanting, and we invite his grandparents, Tom and Shelley Israel, to come forward for the Aliyah.
Yamdu Shabbat Mitzvah Aliyah Torah.
We invite his grandparents, Tom and Shelley Israel.
It is continuing from verse 27.
Baruch Adonai HaBarak.
Baruch Adonai mevorach leolam vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarak le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Elohim lo tikalel v'naseh v'yamecha lo ta'ol. Maleh techavedim aha lo tahil bechol banecha titen li. Ken ta'aseh l'sholecha letzonecha shavat yamim yihye im imo vayom hashmini titno li. Va'anshe kodesh tihum li uvasaret telefa lo tohelu v'kelev tashlihun oto.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tohenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Shekoach. Next, we're going to invite, Abe's going to stay here chanting, and we're going to invite his grandparents, Marlene and Ken Markison.
Yamdu Shabbat Mitzvah Aliyah Torah. Abe is continuing from chapter 23, verse 1.
Baruch et Adonai HaBarak.
Baruch Adonai mevorach leolam vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Lo tesa shemashav alta shet yadecha im lasha lihiod et hamaz. Lo tihye ahalel labim lilaot velo ta'aneh aleliv lintod ahalel labim lachatod veda lo tedal livo ki tivka shoiveha o hamelo to'eh hashem teshivenu lo ki tireh hamol sona'aha lo veit Tahad Masov Havdal Tam Ezov Lo Azov Tazov Imo.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan Torah b'chayei olam nota b'suchenu baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We now call forward Abe as the bar mitzvah by his Hebrew name, after which he'll take the big tzitzit at the corner of his talit, and he'll touch where he'll continue, kiss it before making the blessing. Yamod, 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 b'chor bar mitzvah rishon, Avram Michal, ben David v'Shimona, l'aliyah laTorah, chazak ve'amat.
Baruch Adonai Hamburah.
Baruch Adonai mevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai melech olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'achal banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Lo tateh mishpatim yonecha v'livo, midvo sheker tuhak v'naki v'tzadik. Al tahalo ki lo atzdik lasha, v'shohad lo tika ki hashohad yavel hikahim, v'salev divrei tzadikim, v'ger lo tilhat ve'atem, yiratem et nefesh hagel, ki gerim hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tokeinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yeshua! When someone does something great in the synagogue, you say Yeshua! All right. We're going to pause in our reading to take a moment with the Torah right here. Our people have thought of this Torah for so many generations as the tree of life and the source of light. And so when it's here in our midst, we draw upon the strength of it. Think about the people we know, the people we love who are in need of healing. And so we're going to sing Shabbat. It's in your prayer book on page 371. We're going to pause in the middle of the prayer and invite you to share any names of people you want to include in the prayer, and then we'll pull them all into our prayer together. We're ready for Matt to come up and start chanting Torah. We're going to be continuing now in chapter 20. Let's see, we're continuing in chapter 24, verse 8. And so if you're looking for that, you're going to find that on page 523 in your Torah commentaries. And we're going to be inviting more people up for the honor of the Aliyah. We're going to invite Shannon, Josh, Aaron, and Jordan Rosen now. These are Maeve's aunt, uncle, and cousins.
יעמדו הלווים ובני דוד של בני המצווה לעלייה לתורה.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
אמן. ויקח משה את הדם ויזרוק על העם, ויאמר הנה דם הברית אשר כרת אדוני עמכם על כל הדברים האלה. ויעל משה ואהרון נדב ואביהו ו70 מזקני ישראל, ויראו את אלוהי ישראל ותחת רגליו כמעשה לבנות הספיר וכעצם השמיים לתוהו. ואל עטילי בני ישראל לא שלח ידו, ויחזו את האלוהים ויאכלו וישתו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
Now we're going to invite Rachel, Lance, Charlie, and Jordan Hillman to come up for this next Aliyah. Also an aunt, an uncle, and some cousins.
יעמדו עוד דודים ובני דוד של בני המצווה לעלייה לתורה. That is continuing from verse 12, chapter 24, verse 12.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
אמן. ויאמר אדוני אל משה עלה אלי החרב והיא שם, ואענה לך את לוחות האבן והתורה והמצווה אשר כתבתי לכלותם. ויקם משה ויחושע משרתו, ויעל משה אל הר האלוהים, ואל הזקנים אמר שבו לנו בזה עד אשר נשוב עליכם, ויהיה החלון וכו' עמכם, מבעל דברים ייגש עליכם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. We now call forward Matt Zabar Mitzvah by his Hebrew name, after which he'll take the big seat, the corner of his talit, and touch the scroll where he'll continue before making the blessing. Yamod, 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 Abachor Bar Mitzvah Sheni, Levi Gabriel, Ben Levi B'Shimon al Aliyah LaTorah, Chazak ve'amat.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim Benatananu Tozel, Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
ויעל משה אל ההר וכס הענן את ההר. וישכון כבוד אדוני על הר סיני, ויכסהו הענן 6 ימים. ויקרא אל משה ביום השביעי מתוך הענן. ומראה כבוד אדוני כאש זוחלת בראש ההר לעיני בני ישראל. ויבוא משה בתוך הענן ויעל אל ההר. ויהי משה בהר 40 יום ו40 לילה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת חיי העולם נתן בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Yeshua. Yeshua. We are ready to lift and bless our Torah. We invite our President John Horowitz to lift, and we invite Charlie and Jordan Helming and Jordan Rosen, cousins, to come and dress the Torah. Everyone please rise.
Page 370.
All right, so here's what we do on Shabbat morning. Oh, I hear that the candy has arrived. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you about the candy for a second. The candy is to be kept as quiet as possible right now. And then when we're finished with Haftarah, it is meant to be a gentle shower of sweetness.
Gentle?
That's right.
You mean
Gentle. We know how hard you can throw. You're so good at throwing. We know that already. You could just be very gentle right now. Okay? That's the idea. Okay, what we do on Shabbat morning is we hear the Torah read. Our original sacred text, we hear it. And then we hear the words of the prophets. We hear the prophets interpreting Torah in their own time. And this morning, we're going to be hearing from Jeremiah. And we're going to start on chapter 34, verse 12, which is on page 539 in your Torah commentaries, page 539. And then after we hear the voice of the prophet, then we hear the voice of our teachers this morning, our Darshanim, who interpret Torah in our time, and tell us what we need to understand about the Torah for our lives and for our world. So again, it's Jeremiah chapter 34, starting at verse 12. You're starting on page 539. Ava and Matt are going to chant the opening blessing, and then chant from Jeremiah, and then chant the closing blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratzav v'divrichem hane'emorim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai Habochel b'Torah u'Moshe Abdo u'Yisrael Amo u'B'nei ha'emet b'Tzedek. Vayechi devar Adonai el Yirmiyahu me'et Adonai lemor. כה אמר אדוני אלוהי ישראל אנוכי קראתי ברית את אבותיכם ביום הוציא אותם מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים לאמור מקץ 7 שנים תשלחו איש את אחיו העברית אשר ימכר לך ועבדך 6 שנים ושלחתו כשמימך ולא שמעו אבותיכם אלי ולא הטו את אזנם ותשובו אתם היום ותעשו את הישר בעיני לקרוא דורות איש לרעהו ותקרצו ברית לפני בבית אשר נקרא שמי עליו ותשובו ותחללו את שמי ותשיבו איש את עבדו ואיש את שפחתו אשר שלחתם חובשים לנפשם ותקדשו אותם לחיות לכם לעבדים ולשפחות. שרי יהודה ושרי ירושלים הסריסים והכהנים וכל עם הארץ העוברים בין בקרי העגל ונתתי אותם ביד אויביהם וביד מבקשי נפשם והייתה נבלתם מאחור לעוף השמיים ובהמת הארץ. וצדקיהו מלך יהודה וצלח אתן ביד אויביהם וביד מבקשי נפשם וביד אל מלך בבל העולים אליהם הנני מצווה מאדוני וישיבו אותי אל העיר הזאת ונלהללו עליה ולכדוה ושרפוה באש ואת ערי יהודה אתן שממה מעין יושב כה אמר אדוני ולא איתי יומם ולילה וכל שמיים בארץ לא שמתי גם זרע יעקב ורבי אבי אמץ ניקח מזרעו משלים הזרע אברהם יצחק ויעקב כי השבט אותם וריחמתי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם צור כל העולמים צדיק בכל הדורות האל הנאמן האומר ועושה המדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו אמת וצדק על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
We heard Torah, we heard prophets, and now we get to hear our darshanim, our teachers of Torah for this morning. And this is our opportunity. First of all, you can taste some sweetness because Torah is so sweet. And this is our opportunity to really listen, to think the throwing is complete. Oh, no, maybe it's, see, But I want to tell you that Eva and Matt have written really, really important Divrei Torah. So I want us to really listen to what they have to say. And you're going to speak so slowly and clearly, everyone can hear every single word. Excellent.
Can I sit down?
Okay.
Have you ever been afraid of anything? Maybe a fear of spiders or clowns? Well, as I found out in my parsha, fears as foolish as these could lead to killing people. I specifically focused on the second aliyah in my parsha. Some laws inside of the aliyah include self-defense and what happens when you injure people or steal from them. After reading this, some questions came to my mind. What counts as self-defense? Are you allowed to kill them or just injure them? Is it different in different scenarios, like time of day? One of the verses in my Torah portion is Exodus chapter 22, verses 1 and 2. It says, if the thief is seized while tunneling and he is beaten to death, there is no blood guilt in his case. If the sun has risen on him, there is blood guilt in that case. In other words, if someone breaks into your house at night and you kill them, you're not in trouble. But if someone breaks into your house and it's daytime and you kill them, then you're in trouble. Personally, I believe that in general, it's not okay to kill someone who's trying to steal from you. Even though I don't think it's okay to kill someone, I do understand what the Torah is trying to say about why killing the thief at night, about why killing the thief at nighttime would be allowed. At nighttime back then, it was pitch black. They didn't have electricity or light pollution. If somebody came into your house at midnight, you would be half asleep, disoriented, and you wouldn't be able to see anything. However, if it was noon, you would be fully aware and awake, and you would see that a thief is not going for you, but your valuables. You would be consciously killing them. And so I think that it makes sense that the Torah says that it is not okay to kill someone in the daytime for the reasons I mentioned. Mishnah Sanhedrin, written in the 3rd century, tells us a thief who tunnels his way in is judged on account of its outcome. If he broke through and broke a jug, should there be blood guilt for him, he must pay for the jug he broke. But if there is no blood guilt for him, he's not liable. In other words, if you break into someone's house during the day and you break something, you have to pay for it. But if you break into someone's house at night, because the consequences if you get caught are so severe, you don't have to pay for what you break. Rabbi Amy Shinerman says someone who breaks something at nighttime is exempt from the payment because one who is executed is not required to also pay damages. But I disagree with this. I think that if someone broke into my house and they surrendered and promised to never steal from me again, I wouldn't kill them just because the law permits me to kill them. However, I wouldn't let them go without punishment. They would still have to pay for what they broke. The law has changed a lot in the past 2,000 years, but some things have stayed the same. 46 states have a stand your ground law. This law gives people legal permission to kill someone who enters their premises, including in daylight, and there's no punishment when this happens. Stand your ground laws often apply to daytime events, and they let people use force, sometimes deadly force. Because of this law, it's not that difficult to defend yourself when you kill somebody in stand your ground states. Rabbi Amy Shinerman says this is deeply troubling given how easy it is to claim after the fact that one felt mortally threatened. You could lie about it, and people can feel mortally threatened for stupid reasons. Everyone has phobias that are not actually reasonable, and if you kill somebody because of one of these phobias, I think that shouldn't be legal. In the past couple of months, a court case that focused on self-defense was going on. Kyle Rittenhouse was a 17-year-old kid who went to a protest with a gun to try to prevent people from looting stores. He ended up killing 2 people, and he said that the first guy was attacking him, so that's why he killed him. The second and third guy tried to stop him from running away because they thought he was just killing people. The second guy was hitting him with a skateboard, so Rittenhouse shot and killed him, and he shot the third guy, but he didn't die. Nobody will truly know if Kyle Rittenhouse actually felt mortally in danger because it's just an honor system. Nobody will actually know if he shot the first guy because he liked killing people or he actually thought he was going to die. I think this is a bad system because he took 2 people's lives. Maybe he convinced himself that he actually was in danger even though he wasn't because he doesn't want to go to jail. This system doesn't make any sense to me. Whether it's 3,000 years ago or 3 months ago, the honor system still plays an important role in the legal system today. Humans can only do so much. If somebody doesn't want to go to jail, then they might lie about it, and there's nothing that this current system can do about it, and I think that should change. Shabbat Shalom.
Yeshua, that was really important and meaningful. And now we get to hear from that.
Imagine that you had a whole year to do whatever you wanted. Back in ancient times, when the system was agricultural and they mostly had to work in fields all the time, there was almost no time to do anything but farm. If all they were doing was farming, then they wouldn't have time to make important discoveries and to enjoy themselves. In my parasha, which is about laws, God made a law called Shemitah, where you would work in the fields for 6 years, but then on the 7th, you would let the land rest. When I read this, I asked, does Shemitah still matter to us today, even though we are no longer primarily farmers? I also asked, how do we follow this commandment today, even though we don't work in the fields? I think that Shemitah is important to help fight climate change and to help people who don't have as much as others. One of the main reasons why I think Shemitah is important is for free time. Some people think that work is more important than free time, but I disagree. Rabbi Zvi Hirsch Kalisher from the 19th century agrees with me. According to him, another reason for Shemitah is in order that they should not always be preoccupied with working the soil to provide for their material needs. For in this 1 year, they would be completely free. The liberation from the yoke of work would give them the opportunity for studying Torah and wisdom. In other words, if people didn't have a year, or at least some time, to be free, then they wouldn't be able to invent new things and innovate for the benefit of the world. I think that this was really important to Jews back in ancient times, and it still is for people today. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people have 2 days a week when they can just do what they want. The second reason why Shemitah is important is that it can help poor people. Although you're not allowed to work the land during the Shemitah year, some of the plants and crops will still grow. Sforno, a 16th century rabbi in Italy, said that during the year in Shemitah, the poor will get the first pick of all of these crops. During the COVID pandemic, although everyone was hit, poor people were hit the hardest. Just like Sforno says, it is important to help poor people during the Shemitah year. I think that it is important to help poor people today. In the Torah, Jews are supposed to wait 7 years to help poor people, but I think we should always help people in need. The third and final reason why Shemitah is important is to stop climate change. Trees and plants are good for the environment in cutting down greenhouse gases, which cause climate change. Back in the days of the Torah, they weren't concerned about things like climate change, but it can still help us today with this issue. According to Rabbi Lex Rothberg, who is the senior Jewish educator for Judaism Unbound, leaving the land fallow rejects the notion that the planet and all of its resources exist only to serve us. Because a society that takes care of itself and its most vulnerable is one that is, quite simply, the only moral option. In other words, letting the land rest rejects the idea that the planet and all of its resources exist just for us. Letting it rest shows that we are sharing it with all of the animals, plants, and other living things that need it. Adina Durver, a scholar at the Pardes Institute in Jerusalem, says that no matter what, Shemitah will happen. the planet will find a way to get what it needs. It might not work out well for humans, but the planet will find a way to make it work. If we don't let the earth rest, it will claim its own Shemitah of sorts. Climate change and natural disasters will prevent us from continuing to enjoy the earth's bounty. I agree with that, and I think that this is why we need to allow the planet to rest. Unlike in the time of the Torah, when they let the plant rest by not growing crops, today we should let the planet rest by releasing less greenhouse gases. According to Muriel B. Goldsmith, a founder of Jews Against Hydrofracking, Shemitah forces us to acknowledge that human existence depends on our relationship to the earth. We get food and water and shelter from nature. If there was no nature, we'd all be dead. The planet gives us everything we need to survive, so we should take good care of it. Second, she also says that Shemitah teaches us that caring for the earth and caring for people are inseparable. Poor people can't let the earth rest if they don't have as much, so rich people have to share food and money and supplies so that everyone can follow the laws of Shemitah. This matters to me personally because climate change affects everyone. I want to help people that might be hit the hardest by climate change, even if it's not me. Shemitah lets the earth rest, and although we aren't farmers anymore, the ideas can still be applied to today. Shabbat Shalom.
Shakar, Matt. I'm going to get to respond to both of you now, but first, I'm going to dismiss Yachad. If you're on there on Zoom and you're a Yachad student, follow the link, go to your class, and have a great, wonderful morning of learning. So, Matt, you taught us about the Shemitah year, pulling out 3 reasons for this mitzvah, the mitzvah of every 7 years allowing the land to rest. First, to give us free time. Second, to address hunger and poverty. And third, to give us a more sustainable relationship with the earth. If people are working all the time, you taught us, they wouldn't have time to make important discoveries or to enjoy themselves. You make the case that free time is important in and of itself. You bring Tzvi Hirsch Kalischer's teaching that freedom for work gives us the opportunity to grow in wisdom. And then you point out that in the Shemitah system, poor people were the first to be able to eat, making it an important balancing system for economic inequality. And finally, you tell us that the Shemitah system reminds us that the earth doesn't only exist to serve us, giving us an opportunity to imagine a different way to live on the earth than one based on extraction and maximization of harvest, production, profit. And Abe, you talked about the idea that house robbery during the day versus during the night are different in the Torah, pointing out that tradition tells us that we have the right to kill at night in self-defense because you can't see clearly. And you can't tell if a person's coming to kill you. It was smart to make the connection to stand your ground laws today, which are also about a snap judgment about whether a person is in mortal danger. What's problematic is not just the honor system, as you taught us, but also the fact that our judgments about danger are based on our assumptions about other people and even our imagination. You brought up the case of Kyle Rittenhouse. I couldn't help but think when I was reading your Torah and then hearing it today about Trayvon Martin. A boy in a hoodie with a pack of Skittles looked dangerous to George Zimmerman because he was black. And a jury understood why, because they shared that bias, acquitting Zimmerman of murder and even manslaughter. Like the homeowner facing a home intruder in the night, these laws are based on a subjective assessment of danger based on what we see and what we don't see in another person, whether that's because of lack of light at night or whether that's because of bias. This same Parsha is, a few verses later, aware of human bias. In the chapter after the one that you taught from, Abe, there is a teaching about fairness, and it takes into account the idea that human beings are biased. It tells us that we shouldn't, in a dispute, take the side of the mighty because they're mighty, or the poor because they're poor. neither the powerful nor the powerless, recognizing that actually there are temptations to be biased in both directions. If we have someone we consider an enemy, the Torah teaches in that same section, someone we're totally biased against, we still have to actually help them if they lose their animal or if their animal's struggling under a heavy burden, even if we think of them as our enemy. The Torah is also in the same section concerned about bribes and the way that bribes, quote, have the potential to, quote, blind the eyes and overturn the words of the just. Again, how we see other people has the potential to subvert justice. And all of these laws at the beginning of chapter 23 in this parsha assume that humans will be biased and try to directly address and correct that bias. The section ends with the second iteration of the most common mitzvah in all of Torah, one that appears 36 times. You shall not oppress the stranger, for you know the soul of the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So Matt and Abe, here's the question. What connects laws concerning the Shemitah year, allowing the earth to rest every 7 years, and those concerning self-defense in response to a burglary? Our tradition actually gives us two ways of seeing the connection between these two laws. The first is Yetzer Ra. The Yetzer Ra is translated usually as the evil inclination. It's a part of us, all of us. It's that impulse in us to look out for ourselves, to defend ourselves, to attack enemies or those who might do us harm, to build things for ourselves, to acquire property and wealth, to extract sustenance and profit from the earth, to get and take and build and defend and attack. Now, the rabbis are quick to point out that no one would survive without the Yetzer Ra. We actually need it. We need houses to live in. We need food to eat. We need to be safe. But it becomes Ra, evil, when it's out of balance, when it's too much. It becomes greed. It becomes violence and war. It becomes oppression and domination. It becomes hate. It becomes murder. And in the very worst cases, it becomes genocide. Thursday was International Holocaust Remembrance Day, the day when Auschwitz was liberated in 1945. Here we are observing this day at a time when the denial of the Holocaust is more widespread than ever before. People actually spread the idea that the Holocaust didn't happen, that we made it up, believe it or not. And 6 million Jews and many others just disappeared from the earth. Meanwhile, just 1 year ago this month, a mob attacked the Capitol with at least one person wearing a shirt that said 6MWE. 6 million wasn't enough. Earlier this year, a Tennessee school board banned the book Mouse, a renowned graphic novel about the Holocaust. And just 2 weeks ago, a man held hostages for 11 hours in a synagogue in Colleyville, Texas. And then just yesterday, the entrance to Union Station, the Washington, D.C. train station across from the Capitol, where all the senators and representatives from the Eastern Seaboard come and go from their work on Capitol Hill, was covered in swastikas. So we know about the Yetzer Ra. We know about what happens when it gets out of control. Whether that's about extracting from the earth in such an exaggerated way that it destroys the planet, or whether that's about acting out of a distorted idea of self-defense combined with bias that makes innocent people into the enemy and justifies their murder. But I mentioned that I found two ways in Jewish tradition to make the connection between the Shemitah year and the laws regarding burglary and self-defense. The second, in addition to the Yetzer Ra, comes from Kabbalah. And it's the idea of mochin de katnut and mochin de gadlut, small mind and big mind. The Kabbalists are talking about two kinds of consciousness. One where the world seems narrow and we have to fight to survive. We have to fight to make sure we have enough, and it's me against you, and it's us against them, and I always need more. We now know that this is literally small mind. It's what we call the reptilian brain. It's the small part of the brain, the oldest part of the brain, nearest the brainstem. But the Kabbalists taught, and perhaps you've experienced, that we can pop out of small mind, out of mochin de katnut, into big mind, mochin de gadlut. Or another way to say it would be expanded consciousness. We can elevate our perspective such that we see the interconnectedness of all humanity and all life. It's like zooming out to see the whole earth and our place in it. It's like what I talked about at the beginning of services, how small we are in relation to the great oneness, in relationship to the limitlessness, in relationship to the whole. This is the consciousness that reminds us 36 times that we know the heart of the stranger, that we know the soul of the stranger, for we were strangers. This is the consciousness that allows us to pause before deciding that someone else is dangerous just because they're different. This is the consciousness that enables us to see ourselves as part of the living system of the earth, to recognize that enough for me is only possible long-term when there's also enough to go around, just exactly as you taught us. That we are part of a great interdependent oneness. We think that survival is small mind. It's actually called the survival brain. But ironically, survival at this point in the evolutionary calendar can only happen with big mind. And that brings us back to the Shemitah year and to Shabbat. Because as you taught us, Matt, we need time. We need time to be free from labor, time to grow in wisdom, to be able to see with mochin de gadlut, with the big mind that we all possess. That is why Shemitah is so important. Sabbaticals are so important. Vacations are so important. That is why Shabbat is so important. Time is a prerequisite for the expansion of consciousness we need for our future. The expansion of consciousness we need to have a future. We have it in us not to kill the burglar in the night. We have it in us for never again to be real. We have it in us to live in harmony with the earth. This day, the day of rest, this year, 5782 is a Shemitah year, this year, the year of rest. Big mind is how we can see our way there. Shabbat shalom. So those are the new month coming up.
There's a new month coming up, and you may not be talking about February, but you could be.
So true, but I was not.
In the Hebrew calendar, we have a new month coming up, and it is a Hebrew leap year, speaking of special years. So instead of an extra day, we have an extra month.
So true.
So we're going to bless that new month on page 379.
Please rise.
Now, because of the extra month, we have to wait a little while longer for Purim. So whereas you might expect Purim melodies to make their way into this blessing, we instead draw from melodies associated with other happy occasions in the coming month. Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu, ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, שתחדש עלינו את החודש הבא לטובה ולברכה. Veti של שלום, חיים של פרנסה, חיים שתהיבנו אהבת תורה, ויראת שמיים, חיים, חיים, שימלאו משאלות ליבנו לטובה, amen. We read together. Our God, the God of our ancestors, may the new month bring us goodness and blessing. May we have long life, peace, prosperity, a life exalted by love of Torah and reverence for the divine, a life in which the longings of our hearts are fulfilled for good. Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph. Beyom Shlishi ubeyom Revi'i. Ay, Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph begins on Tuesday and Wednesday. We've got Groundhog Day, and Groundhog Day, and Groundhog Day, and Groundhog Day, and Valentine's Day, and President's Day. Marbim besimcha. What does that mean, Rabbi Shmuel?
Those who enter into Adar, I don't have this one. Those who bring in or enter into Adar increase joy. This is the month when we increase joy.
And there are 2 months of Adar.
We
So we have 2 months for joy to increase.
Double joy. Double joy.
Wow.
So now, in a joyous moment, I'm going to return the Torah to the ark with Matt and Abe and give them a blessing, and their Aunt Shannon is going to sing Etz Chaim Hi. So this is an exciting moment. I should say their Aunt Cantor, Shannon. Okay, everyone remain standing. Matt and Abe, I need you.
Page 374. 586 at the bottom, Aleinu L'Shavei.
Aleinu L'Shavei.
You may be seated. We always end our time together by thinking about the people we love whom we've lost. And I know that Matt and Abe's family are thinking so much about their grandfather, Alan, Dan's father, Janet's father. As we approach this particular Kaddish on this particular day of so much simcha in your life of the family. If you are someone who is in Shiva, if this is the first week since the death of someone you love, I want to invite you to rise and say that person's name aloud. And if you're on Zoom, you can write the name into the chat.
My sister Susan Levin.
And if you are in Shloshim, if you're in the first 30 days since the death of someone you love, I invite you to rise and say that person's name out loud. And if you're in Shana, the first year since the death of someone you love, I invite you to rise and say that person's name out loud. I'm remembering my father, Eli Timoner. And if this is a yahrzeit for you, the anniversary of the death, I invite you to rise and tell us who you're remembering. And we all rise in company with the mourners in our midst. We remember these recent losses in our congregational community. Ellen Dean, mother of Karen Bowers, mother-in-law of Nick Bowers, and grandmother of Duncan and Eli. Edward Ruslan, father of Larry Ruslan, father-in-law of Laura Dalheim, and grandfather of Sylvie and Henry. Sheldon Dollinger, father of Marna Dollinger, father-in-law of Stephen Gold, and grandfather of Michaela and Kevin. Rosalie Lovett, our member and wife of Bruce Lovett, mother of Sam and Sarah, and grandmother of Russell, Patrick, Nathan, and Gabrielle. Michael Sabin, father of Jessica Corner, father-in-law of Ari Corner, grandfather of Stella, Maxton, and Milo. And these yard sites: Anita Bernard, Caroline Bernberg, Abraham Blum, Henriette Blum, Sarah Borer, Edith Burloff, Samuel J. Engel, Herman Feinstein, Edith Fine, Max Feiertag, Helen Fox, Charles Frank, Emily George Gottfried, William Gates, Lena Goldschmidt, Annie Goldsmith, Babette Goldsmith, Joseph Gordon, Sylvia Golden, Denise Himes, Sydney Kalt, Susan Kaiser, Louis Kleiman, Frida Landis, Robert Levitt, Norman Levy, Wolf Lifshitz, Arnold Pastor, Eugene Paul, Susan Pereira, Helen Peters, Annie Rockmore, Louis Rosenberg, Sidney Roth, Dorothy Rubin, Ruth Runsdorf, Edith Sands, Larry Shukin, Stephen Shane, Neil Owen Ustin, Pauline Van Ralt, Annie Warnock. Holding them all together, we say Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be an everlasting blessing as we turn to the Mourner's Kaddish. It's on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach hiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh. V'chayachon v'yomachon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabbah v'barach le'elam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal. Shmei t'kudesha bruch. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya ve'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'romav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. May the maker of peace make peace for all who mourn. And we say together, Amen.
Oseh shalom b'romav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru.